Hey everybody, I wanted to make this post because pretty much I talk about a lot of political things, and the basic response I get from people, and I understand this because today the majority of people that you see on the internet get their information from, crazy other websites or Google or places like that, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I do not get my information from any internet-based source or anything like that. Everything I talk about is something I saw firsthand or have some kind of direct connection to. And that's what this post is going to be about. Basically, I'm going to introduce myself to you and tell you what happened in my life and how God has literally kept me on a path to see these things my entire life, even making my curses my later advantages. And that's just, that's the might of God, But basically, most of my information that I get comes from what I saw when I was in the military. I know most of y'all know me and know that, while I was here, I was some pilled out junkie, this and that. But I'm telling you, when I was in the military, I was a different person. Like, it was different. I had hope. I was out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Like, I was doing something I loved and that I was good at. I mean, I literally excelled at it. I mean, my command sergeant major, the first briefing we had, pulled me out because I was able to answer a question about the Irish Republican terrorists and their connection with Irish natives in Boston. Anyway, and it actually was a disadvantage by a lot of my military career, because anybody in the military will tell you that the last thing you want to do is set yourself out. You know what I'm saying? Because then you're going to be the one that gets volunteered for everything, and they'll run you ragged. And if you think that you're special or an individual, or think you have some kind of special skill above everyone else, they're going to make you prove it. And they're going to make you look like a fool if you're wrong. So, I mean, that's where a lot of my confidence that I have today came from, because I've literally stood in front of 3-star generals and given briefings where they have stopped me in the middle of a briefing, and asked me questions, and I had to pick up, keep it within 7 to 9 minutes. And anyway, it's crazy. And you have to memorize the briefing completely. The only assistance I have is a PowerPoint presentation with bullet points behind me, basically saying, the attack in 1987. And then my briefing is literally a 3-paragraph memorized briefing on the attack in 1987, But anyway, so, that's one place in my photographic memory really did, help me out. But where it all started, really, believe it or not, was me being in a wheelchair. I spent the majority of my 6th and 7th grade year in a wheelchair and learning how to walk again. Shattering my femur bone. So, call me a nerd or whatever you want. But so while everybody else was outside playing and stuff like that, like, I was literally in the library reading books. And I thank God for that, because during that time I read books like The Five Rings, Sun Tzu's Art of War, Machiavelli, places, things like that. And it just really ignited my hunger for wanting to know things, I guess you can say, And so basically the next 10 years is just me screwing up, being a drug addict. I'll be first to admit it. Really was. Until one day I had enough and I literally went in the military. And, after getting through basic training, because I'm definitely not a strong soldier, I was a smart soldier. It was a blast after that. Like, as soon as I got to intelligence school that had a 70% failure rate, I was the top of my class. I was literally making briefings up that people were having to spend weeks to assemble. I had sprained my ankle during training at one point. And because it's an accelerated course that actually counts as college credit, which is one reason why I got 16 college credits from this training, it's so fast and accelerated, they say that if you miss one day, that there's no way you can catch up, because it's 8 hours a day, so you're literally missing like 8 days by missing one day, So by me spraining my ankle and being gone to the medic, I had missed 2 full days of class, and basically had a briefing due the day I got back. And in an hour and a half, I literally snuck away from let me tell you how slick God is. Let me go ahead and tell you this. Because our barracks were on the other side of the base at Fort Huachuca. And the way we would do it is every morning we would assemble. Everybody would go to breakfast. They'd march us to breakfast. And then from the breakfast hall, they'd march us to our training grounds. Well, I also knew that, they were real lax about taking roll call and all that. And I had to buy time. I needed at least an hour and a half bare minimum. So when everybody formed up to go to breakfast, I made it look like I needed to break off to use the bathroom. So I broke off and went into a porta potty. And literally ran across the base all the way to the our training building, and got to class an hour and a half early, sneaking into this building that literally has like a security guard and everything, and getting into the classroom, and I literally make up a briefing on the Tamil Tigers of Sierra Leone just off the top of my head, off of shit that I just already knew. And my teacher, who was also a very intelligent guy, actually called me out on it and pulled me out in the hallway, and he was like, Baron, he's like, you just made that shit up, didn't you? Because in the briefing, you have to have pictures too, and this is where the 3-star general like called me out, because he actually comes in to monitor this day, just God throwing in his little sense of humor into my life. So this 3-star general just comes in, decides to sit down and to monitor us, and I'm giving my briefing, and in my picture is basically it's supposed to be about like suicide bombers on a fishing boat, trying to use a anti-tank mine to sink one of our ships like they did the USS Cole. And basically it was a picture of beautiful Filipino-looking women in a fishing boat. And they stopped me and they were like, wait a minute, what's this got to do with terrorism? And to be honest with you, it was the only picture I could find at the time, and I wasn't even going to put it in there. I accidentally left it in there. And so this is the excuse I come up with off the top. I said, well, after the USS Cole incident, they have a 2-mile kill zone around all of our destroyers and cruisers now, to where even if a fishing boat comes within 2 miles, they'll open up with their phalanx cannons and their 50 cal machine guns and basically sink the boat after giving 2 verbal warnings. And now the terrorists have gotten creative and decided to use beautiful women, and because they figure that these sailors who are sometimes on up to a year-long deployment will be more apt to allow beautiful women to come close to the boat. And so now instead of using some dude with a beard who they would naturally just blow up out of the water 3 miles away, they put beautiful women with suicide vests on and blah, blah, this and that. Total lie, total bullshit. I ain't gonna lie, just off the top of my head. And he believed it. I carried on with my briefing. Teacher pulls me out in the hallway and calls me out on it. He's like, Baron, I know you made that shit up. He said, but I'm gonna tell you right now, he said, great job. He said, everything you came up with, I mean, it's not like I made up details. Everything I said was true facts, And I got through that. Well, in my time in the military, because of having the top secret clearance, the reason why I know a lot of the things I know is because I saw a lot of things. And being in the Army, they call it scuttlebutt. Rumors fly like crazy. I mean, if you take a girl to a hotel room, by the time you're back on base, your entire platoon knows about it. That's how fast the word spreads in the military. And same thing with top secret information. I mean, I hate to say it, but like amongst the people with the security clearance, we all know what's going on. Like, even though we might not be working on this top secret job, we know people that do. And because of that, like, we talk. So we hear about the junkyards full of Army vehicles in the middle of Afghanistan that the Afghan Army's just poking holes in, and as soon as we send them another 1,000 trucks, they sell it off to some foreign enemy, usually Iran, some enemy of ours, for millions of dollars. Or how, for example, we were funding a lot of their police forces, and at the Battle of Why Not, it was the very police force that we had funded that basically took off their uniforms, put on turbans, and helped the Taliban attack our soldiers. And it was one of the most devastating battles in all of Afghanistan because we got caught with our pants down. Our helicopters weren't fueled. It literally took 2 hours for air support to get overhead. By the time we got there, they were literally dragging U.S. soldiers, because they always like taking trophies. And basically it was just, an utter disaster. And come to find out, the way it happened was because we were betrayed by the Afghan National Police Force. And then through this investigation, they find out that they have 17 officers on the payroll. That were 17 people receiving paychecks in this Afghan police department. They only had 6 officers. They literally, because it's a third world country and stuff, and it's really easy to do this stuff, they literally created like 10, 12 officers just out of thin air. And we were sending payroll to that. So they were just keeping the money because we pay in cash. They don't have banks and stuff in Afghanistan. You can't pay these guys. And, as a matter of fact, a lot of times they didn't even want cash. They wanted gold, which is basically kind of the mercenary currency. You learn this when you're in Army Intelligence. As a matter of fact, most mercenary armies pay their soldiers in gold and not currency. For example, the French Foreign Legion, they pay in gold. They don't pay in cash or currency. So, like, you hear about the planes taking off from D.C. with $30 billion on, and these types of situations when money's transported and all that, that's always done by mercenary groups, Blackwater and groups like that. And I don't know why, because their record is horrible. And I mean, it has to be the fact that they're splitting the profits with the politicians or something, because their record is just atrocious. I mean, you would hear stories of $30 billion in cash being taken out from D.C. and landing in Bagram with less than $15 billion. And nobody ever goes to jail. There'll be like a year-long investigation. Like, they will scare people, but as soon as they find out it's the mercenary group, it's like, no, we're not interested. And all of a sudden, it gets out of the Army's jurisdiction and falls into the Senate Review Board's jurisdiction. So, like, the Army can't even investigate it. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like, another situation, whenever we took Iraq, one of the things that they had assigned Blackwater to, and everything I'm telling you, by the way, is declassified. I'm not an idiot. I mean, they do make it very clear what I can get put under the jail for saying. So everything I'm going to tell you is going to be declassified, and you can literally look it up on Google. This is all known stuff that's been reported. One of the jobs that they gave Blackwater was to secure the Iraqi National Museum. And I mean, this is literally where Babylon was. You know, they got artifacts in there from 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, one of the first civilizations. You know what I'm saying? It was very important that we save these artifacts, you know? And, I mean, it's literally our history, you know? And so they send in Blackwater. Well, Blackwater gets there, and they report that it's destroyed, that the Taliban, you know, being the Muslim crazies that they are, they destroyed all the relics because they were not promoting Islam or some crazy story like that, which everybody in intelligence already knew was BS, because at that time, it was not, the Taliban was not in Iraq. It was not the Taliban attacking us. That was another little secret that the politicians lied about. Who was attacking us was the 1.2 million ex-Iraqi soldiers who we just fired overnight, after making promises that we would keep them at least a part of their government and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, we literally disassembled the Iraqi army overnight, telling 1.2 million trained killers that they're out of a job. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking, because there was only one thing for them to do at that point. The only thing they know to do is kill. You know what I mean? So that's who was attacking us. So as soon as we heard that the Taliban destroyed the museum, that's what drew our attention. You know, people like me looked at, well, hold up, there's something here. And then, sure enough, a year later, I'm talking to a friend of mine in CID, and that's the detectives that do the investigating in the military. And come to find out, a year later, all these relics from the Iraqi National Museum start showing up on Amazon Prime, on Amazon or eBay, eBay, excuse me, start showing up on eBay, and after, you know, the government, you know, hears about it and all, they do investigations, and sure enough, it ends up being like ex-employees of these mercenary groups. And basically what they did was they raided the museum, everybody filled up a bag, and nobody said anything. And that's why they quickly, and see, I knew this was them too, because another thing that gave them away is immediately all of a sudden, they deemed the site secure and asked for a fast response team to come in and secure it so that they could go back to base. So they were in a very big hurry to be done with that job. I'll put it like that. Like, they usually just wait for the army to come in and, you know, relieve them or something like that. They were like, where are they at? They need to hurry up, man. We need to get out of here. You know, I think they even made up that they had intel of a pending enemy attack or something. Like, there was a story behind it. Like, they literally like faked an attack or something like that to get the army to hurry up and get there, because mercenary groups don't have air support and stuff like that. You know, they're good for security and basically doing the illegal stuff, like transporting money and stuff. And so, you know, you hear about that. You know, like another big investigation was in the United States. Whenever we go to the firing range and stuff in the military, they do what they call police up their brass. And what that means is you're picking up your individual shells and stuff, because we recycle it in the United States. It's profitable enough to do that. But in Afghanistan, they don't do that because it's just too much money to ship all that brass back to the United States to recycle. And there's no recycling plants nowhere near Afghanistan, you know. So basically, the Army don't care what we do with it, so we don't care what, you know. You'll see some FOBs where the bullets will be so piled up that soldiers are literally just sliding, you know, literally sliding across it like they're sliding down a slip and slide, you know, and have to be ordered by you know, their commander to pick the stuff up. Well, quickly you realize that like the Afghan nationals that we would be deployed with would be asking to pick up the brass, you know, and we figured, you know, like, okay, well, you know, maybe he's creating his own bullets, because believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, a lot of the militias that we pay millions of dollars to fight with us, we don't do things like provide them with bullets and stuff. So like these warlords that we're paying millions of dollars to will make their soldiers provide their own bullets. It's a very common thing. It was one of the biggest problems that our soldiers, our special forces soldiers, had at the very beginning when they were dealing with these militia groups, was that they literally didn't have bullets. Like, it wasn't like the warlord would have 1,000 soldiers and issue 1,000 soldiers bullets. Like, each dude would be like a dude that worked for him on a payroll, and it was up to him to bring his own gun and his own bullets. And it's a crazy system. Like, these dudes literally break from battle for lunch breaks and dinner breaks. They would fight all day to take a hill and literally all of a sudden give up their every position they took because it's lunchtime. But anyway, so come to find out what they were doing is, to make this very long story short, was they were taking the brass and they were trading it to the Taliban for hash. Over there, they like a combination of marijuana with a little bit of opium in it. And I guess that's hash, or whatever, I don't know. And they were taking our bullets and trading them to the Taliban, who are both of our enemies supposed to be, for this hash. And the Taliban were taking these bullets and recycling them, and that way they can take the rifles from the dead soldiers and stuff and basically use our own bullets and guns against us, pretty much. Because the only access to weapons they had were, 30-year-old AK-47s and stuff like that, and what was being supplied to them by Iran and China and Russia and places like that. So basically just 7.62 millimeter rounds. They didn't really have access to the 5.56, which is basically our standard issue. Very small round. It really sucks, but that's actually one of the biggest advantages to it is that we're really the only ones that pretty much predominantly use the 5.56. So it's hard for the enemy to get a supply of them. Stuff like that. And, you hear about, like people like Bradley Manning, he had my job. He was actually 2 classes ahead of me, Bradley Manning was. Whenever we were going through training, like every other day, it got so old, man, because every other day they were saying something about Bradley Manning and don't become like Bradley Manning. And I don't care if you get pissed off one day and they tell you to blow up an American city or whatever, or take part in some conspiracy. Don't be an idiot and give away classified information because you'll be in that Florence, Colorado, under the prison 24-hour-a-day lockdown. They make us sign a piece of paper. We're under the threat of things called debriefings, which at any time they could come in. Even right now, like it's still part of my contract for another 2 years. They could literally come in and give me a debriefing just to see if I've given away top secret information. That's one reason why I never have and never will. Because, the way things are looking, we could be at a war anytime. And if they give me a declassification to find out that, like, I told somebody something I wasn't supposed to tell somebody, then that would not be good. In a wartime, I don't think they'd put me in prison, but they would definitely give me the shittiest job in the military. That's people that end up big wheel mechanics or KP or something like that. Some real shitty job with no security clearance and no future. But, so a lot of the information, like I said, like, I know how they work, I'll give you another one. Oh my God, like the amount of food these militaries waste. It will blow your mind. I'm talking about, they could end the homeless starvation problem tomorrow. I'm no lie. When you think about it, that like in Texas, they got 4 army bases in Texas alone, right? Oklahoma has like 2 or 3. Okay. Now here's what the problem is. Okay. A lot of these units are out in the field doing training at nighttime and all that. It's actually what they do when they're either in a classroom training or they're out in the field training. That's just how it is. Well, communication in the military is not very advanced as you would think it is. And let's just say that people will tend to forget to tell the cafeteria that, yes, there's 2,000 soldiers in the field, but they split us up into night shifts and day shifts. So even though there's 2,000 of us out there, we only need 1,000 lunches and 1,000 dinners. You know what I'm saying? Because basically while one's awake, the other half is asleep. Well, they don't tell them that. So they send us 2,000 pieces of chicken, 2,000 things of green, enough for 2,000 people. And because of Army regulations, once it leaves the dining facility, it cannot go back in. And we would have to throw away pans, and I'm talking about like at least 500, pieces of chicken, 1,000 pieces of chicken. And, it was cool for us because I was glad I was assigned to the supply van, because this is when I sprained my ankle and stuff. And was on light duty, so I got assigned to the supply van. And basically we could get all the free bread. Basically any of the stuff we want to take back to the barracks we could take. But I even asked our commander. I was like, why are we not giving this? There's like a homeless shelter like 3 miles outside the gate. And Arizona's a pretty poverty-stricken state, especially right there by the border. I mean, it's basically Mexico. And he basically told me that the Army would not give homeless shelters this food, and it's better to throw away enough food to feed 3,000 people, or 1,000 people, excuse me, because they would sue the Army, pretty much. So, and I don't really buy that excuse, because even us soldiers, when we go into a dining facility, there's a little sign-in sheet, right? And basically, you have to. It's just to make sure that the people that are supposed to be eating are the ones eating. But how difficult would it be to have a same sign-up sheet at a homeless shelter? Basically, it's just like a legal thing that says, if I get food poisoning, I can't sue. I'm sure 1,000 people that were starving to death would rather take the risk of eating some old chicken than not eating at all. And it's not old. I mean, literally, like, as soon as we got out to we would know within 45 minutes of this stuff being cooked that we had way too much, what I mean? And we could have easily been like, okay, well, instead of driving back to the dining facility, which is on this side of the base, let's go outside the gate, go 2 miles away, and just drop it off at this homeless shelter. It would have taken almost the exact same amount of time. As a matter of fact, the dining facility was so far away from the training area that it would have taken less time for us to go outside the gate and drive to the homeless shelter, then drive back to the dining facility where the dumpster was, where we had to throw all this stuff away. And it just never felt right throwing away 14 pans of green peas and like 8 pans of mashed potatoes and, 12 pans of whole chickens, just gone. But that's how it is. And then you factor in that there's like, some states have 3 or 4 Army bases, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just say, and that's just one platoon, right? That's one company, okay? At any time at Fort Huachuca, we had 4 companies in the field with 4 supply vans. So just to give you an idea, that's 4,000 meals a day that we were throwing away on average. And and we would tell the people at the dining facility, but I mean, apparently it was like some kind of signed paperwork they had to have or whatever, I don't know, it was just crazy. And basically, I know for the month that I was on supply wagon, like every day, that's what it would. If one piece of bread was taken out of a loaf of bread, we had to throw it away. If the little twisty thing had been removed from the loaf of bread, we could not take it back in the dining facility. Like, they had the strictest regulations when it came to food. So that was another thing, just a sheer waste, man. Just like, God, and just the accidental waste. I'm not even talking about the on purpose waste. That's on a whole different level. And basically, let's just say, in my time, I used my security clearance to learn about a couple of things. Having a top secret TSI, SCI clearance, which is the highest clearance you can have, which, that's why I chose Army Intelligence. That's why I waited 2 years to go in the Army just to have that job. It was because if I wasn't going to do some James Bond shit, then it wouldn't, I knew I wasn't going to be Rambo. I'm not no strong dude, I knew where I was going to be good at. And, like I said, because of, possible, debriefings, especially with us about to go to Russia and stuff, I can't specifically say things, but let's just say I know things because of things I've seen, and I mean, not to mention, what basically you just reading books, that's where the information gap is today. Is like 99% of people are getting their information from the internet. Nobody's reading books. I mean? Like, with books, there's one story. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can read 1,000 different history books, the history's the same. You know what I'm saying? Go on the internet, look up a battle from 3 different websites, and you're going to get 3 totally different stories. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's another thing. Like, anybody that's getting their information from the internet, you're wrong. Go to a library, take the time, man. There's some great books out there. Sun Tzu's Art of War, The 5 Rings by Hirohito Musashi. I mean, there's some enlightenment books out there that will blow your mind and make you think of things in ways that you've never thought about it before. And I mean, I don't want to seem like some geek or whatever, but I've also been on not just a historical military kick my whole life. I've been on a real big, religious kick, and that's why Hirohito Musashi and the Five Rings are one of my favorite books, because Hirohito Musashi was the greatest Japanese swordsman in history. He actually invented the two-hand style, and the reason why I love him is because he was absolutely insane. He hated being number one so bad, because basically every village he went to, some young buck would step up and challenge him, and even if he would try not to fight him, he would have to, because it's samurai, it's honor code. So after a certain point, there wasn't a village in all of Japan where he hadn't killed somebody, and every time he would go to that village, somebody would step up and he'd have to kill somebody, and he becomes this crazy recluse where the story goes that the number 2 sword fighter in Japan challenges him to a match, and they decide to have this samurai style battle on the beach right at sunrise. And the second number 2 dude, he's totally polar opposite from Hirohito Musashi. He's like disciplined, like all serious about everything. And Musashi shows up and he's stone cold drunk off sake and doesn't even have a sword. And was literally like stumbling and stuff, and the guy, number 2 dude, is so offended that he goes off, like, how dare you dishonor me, this and that, and basically tells him that the dishonor is so great that he's going to go ahead and kill him without a sword, because normally it would be a dishonor to fight a man without a sword, especially if he was drunk. But, so he goes ahead, and Musashi, being the badass, like, straight up ninja dude that he was, picks up a piece of driftwood. Now, this is confirmed history. Feel free to look it up. This actually happened. There was supposedly like a whole village full of witnesses that saw this. And Musashi, stone cold drunk, with a piece of driftwood, beats this dude in like 13 seconds. Takes his sword from him, uses his small katana sword to stab him. And like, ends up killing dude with his own sword. That's how good this dude was. And if you read the Five Rings, like to explain the facts, yeah. So basically, half his life he lives like this recluse. He kills everybody, and he then has a spiritual crisis and basically becomes a Buddhist monk and goes and lives in a cave and spends the other half of his life exploring spiritual matters. And supposedly even predicted the day he was going to die, because the last day that he supposedly put the last entry in the Book of Five Rings, he supposedly called for a scribe to come from the local shogun's court. And just to have him be able to summon someone from the shogun's court alone shows the level of honor they had towards this man. And he supposedly, the way the story goes is Musashi hands the Book of Five Rings, which is basically his analysis on life as a whole and spirituality, and says it is done. And supposedly that very night he died in his sleep. And like the recorded day of his death, they had a big ceremony. Like there's historical proof that he literally died the day that he wrote the Book of Five Rings, or finished the Book of Five Rings in his sleep, which was something he said he continuously throughout his life, that people would always ask him, when's the book going to be done? When's the book going to be done? Because he spent like 30 years writing it, And he'd tell him, it'll be done the day I die. And it literally was. And if you read the Book of Five Rings, it is hard to follow. It's deep. I ain't even gonna lie about it. It was more difficult than Sun Tzu's Art of War. But in it, he basically says that the only way that you can become a master of anything is by being taught by no one. And he said the reason why he was the best and why he could never be defeated, no matter how drunk he was, no matter how debauched he was, that he literally fought a dude one time while kissing a girl. I think was how the story went. The reason why he won is because basically he never feared death. And on top of that, because he never feared death and he never sought out a teacher, he never went to a dojo and took up with a sword master or whatever the custom was back then. He taught himself. And he said, because of that, I was never limited by anyone else's borders. Because whenever you're taught by someone else, the amount of achievement you can do is usually analyzed by how much that last person achieved. So you're really basing your own self-opinion off your teacher, not you. So Musashi basically said, one, I didn't give a fuck, excuse my language, and two, basically, I was passionate about it. I loved it. I taught myself. He said every battle, he would not feel fear. He would analyze it, move for move, kind of like what you saw in the movie Sherlock Holmes. I'm picturing in my head it would be something like that, where he would literally analyze a battle before he ever fought it, knowing each move, But I highly recommend the book. I'm not going to go into it because it gets into some real deep philosophies and kind of. That's why they call it the 5 rings, because it's basically the 5 different elements of a person that makes them a good person in the long run. To make it very, very small. Basically, I'm taking a very, very deep concept and breaking it down into the most layman's terms possible. But anyway, so there's some great books out there, man, and stuff you're never gonna be able to learn or experience, until you read a book. You're not gonna get it on the internet. You're not, But I don't know. Just the internet's just too much now, man. There's 5 opinions for every subject now. It's just too much. There's 4 pieces of bullshit for every piece of honesty. I mean, like I said, with books are books. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can read 1,000 books written about the same subject, and they're all going to say the same thing. With small little variations, just, much like the different books in the New Testament have small variations, but it's the same story. So basically, that's where you just got to, study the small stuff and find out what the small bullshit is, But at least then, all you got to figure out small bullshit instead of just the whole thing being bullshit. But so anyway, yeah, a lot of the things I speak about, I might not be able to tell you how I know, but I mean, I don't ever say anything that I don't know. You know what I mean? And I truly do believe that we are under a one-party system. I do believe that the Democrats, or who are really the Republicans, because if you look at the Civil War and study history, you will see that the Democrats were expelled, with the exception of like 12 Democrats in the entire government, and the Republicans filled their seats with their own people. And because of Lincoln getting assassinated, martial law being declared, I've studied history thoroughly after the Civil War, and I cannot find a period where there was a rejoining of 2 parties. I mean, basically, the Republicans became the Democratic Party, and from that point on, the Republican Party was filled with their yes men. I mean, that's just how it's been. And even though we seem to have 2 parties, it's one. I don't care how you look at it. But anyway, so I mean, basically that's that's pretty much me. That's the story of my life. I'm in the military, and now I'm just be honest with you, I'm about to try to run for state representative for the Libertarian Party. It's just a thing where they're getting people on the ballot. I'm not expecting to win. This is just kind of my way of introducing myself to the election committee and stuff. But I think that's what I'm gonna try next, is really try to get into politics and see how long it'll take for me to get assassinated. Because if I ever had any power, they would have to kill me. Like, there's no way they would allow what I know to get out. There's no way. There's no way. If people knew what I knew, well, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, we are the American people, the laziest, population in history. So, I mean, we might not do nothing if y'all knew what I knew, but, yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Y'all have a good night.